"Do you think I still deserve to be happy?" asked the girl with Down syndrome on a blind date. Her peers thought it would be a cruel joke, but the single father surprised everyone with his reaction, a love story that touched millions of hearts. Subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, and comment on where you are watching from. The sweltering heat of March in New York City seemed to intensify every emotion that lingered in the air. Fifth Avenue buzzed with the typical movement of a Tuesday afternoon, hurried executives mingling with street vendors, creating an urban symphony that echoed among the historic buildings of downtown. In the midst of this crowd, Café Bella stood out as an oasis of tranquility, with its rustic wooden tables and the sweet aroma of pastries wafting through the slightly open door. Sitting at a table near the window, Emily Johnson tightly held a small bouquet of white daisies, their petals slightly wilted from the heat. At 24 years old, Emily had deep brown eyes that sparkled with a mix of hope and anxiety, while her delicate fingers trembled slightly as she arranged the flowers for the 10th time in the last 5 minutes. Her light blue floral dress, carefully chosen by her mother that morning, contrasted with her curly brown hair pulled back in a simple bun, with a few loose strands framing her round and expressive face. "He will like me, won't he?" she whispered to herself, repeating the question she had practiced in front of the mirror in the modest home in Brooklyn where she lived with her parents. Emily had Down syndrome, but her determination to live a full life always outweighed any limitations that others tried to impose on her. Across the street, near the subway station at 42nd Street, David Smith walked hesitantly toward the cafe. At 35 years old, David was of average height, with dark hair already showing a few grey strands at the temples, a result of the stress of raising his daughter Lily alone. His calloused hands from his night job as an accountant contrasted with the dark grey suit he wore, the same one he had worn for all special occasions since his ex-wife left, taking not only his dreams of a perfect family, but also his self-esteem. "This is ridiculous, David. You should have ignored those idiots," he murmured. As he nervously adjusted his tie, the colleagues at Smith & Co. had spent the entire week teasing him about his non-existent love life. "A man your age, Smith, and no woman? How about we set you up with someone?" they had said amid cruel laughter, organizing this date as if it were an elaborate prank. The truth was that David had avoided relationships ever since Sarah, his ex-wife, discovered that Lily had been born with cerebral palsy and simply disappeared one morning, leaving only a note, "I can't handle this, I'm sorry." Since then, he had built walls around, his heart focusing all his energy on being a father and provider for Lily, an 8-year-old girl who attended a specialized school on the Upper East Side. Emily noticed the movement on the street, and her heart raced. The man approaching matched the description that Julio, the baker at the bakery where she worked, had given her. Julio knew David because they both took the same bus in the early mornings, David heading to his night job, Julio returning from his shift, preparing fresh pastries for the next day. Could it be him, Emily wondered, smoothing her dress once more? Her parents, Mrs. Carmen and Mr. John, had been worried when she mentioned the arranged date, but they respected her decision to seek her own happiness. "My daughter has the right to dream like anyone else," Mrs. Carmen had told her husband the night before. David entered the cafe, and his eyes scanned the room until they landed on Emily. For a moment, he felt a tightness in his chest. Not disappointment, but something he couldn't identify. There was a light in her eyes, a purity he hadn't seen in years. Emily smiled shyly and waved, the daisies swaying gently. "You must be David," said Emily as he approached, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "I'm Emily. Julio said you are a very good person." David hesitated for a second, remembering his colleague's laughter. "Let's see if you have the guts, Smith, or will you run away at the last minute like you always do?" But something in Emily's genuine smile stopped him from turning back. "Hi, Emily," he replied, pulling out a chair to sit down. "Did you bring flowers?" "They are for you." She extended the bouquet with a timid yet determined gesture. "My mom always says that flowers bring joy to any sad heart." The simplicity of the gesture touched David unexpectedly. When was the last time someone had given him flowers? When was the last time someone cared if his heart was sad? "Thank you," he said, accepting the daisies. "They are very beautiful." "How is Lily?" Emily asked, surprising David. "Julio told me you have a little girl. She must be very special." David's chest tightened. How did she know about Lily? And why didn't she show pity or discomfort, like most people did when they learned about the girl's special needs? "She's doing well," he replied cautiously. "She's a very brave girl." "Special children are always the bravest," Emily smiled knowingly. "They teach us that being different doesn't mean being less important." A comfortable silence settled between them as the waiter approached to take their order. Emily ordered a latte and a pastry, while David opted for a black coffee, as he always did when he was nervous. "Can I ask you a question?" Emily broke the silence, her fingers playing with the edge of the tablecloth. "Do you think I still deserve to be happy?" The question hit David like a punch to the stomach. The raw vulnerability in her voice, the courage to expose her deepest fears to a stranger, stirred something dormant inside him. How many times had he asked himself the same question in the mirror, especially on lonely nights after Lily fell asleep? "Why do you ask that?" he inquired, his voice softer than he intended. Emily lowered her eyes, tears glistening without falling. "Because I've heard so many people say that people like me should settle for less, that we shouldn't dream too big." David felt a rage grow in his chest, not at her, but at all those who had ever made this extraordinary woman believe she deserved less than anyone else. "Emily," he said, leaning slightly forward, "we all deserve to be happy. Everyone." Emily's latte cooled slowly as she watched David with a genuine curiosity he hadn't experienced in years. The golden afternoon light filtered through the cafe's window, creating an almost cinematic atmosphere around them. The hustle and bustle of Fifth Avenue continued outside, but within that small space, the world seemed to shrink to just two people trying to get to know each other. "Tell me about your job," Emily said, carefully breaking the pastry into small pieces. "Julio said you work with numbers. I love math." David nearly choked on his coffee. "You like math?" "Very much." Emily's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "I work at a bakery doing the ingredient calculations and organizing the inventory. The pastries turn out perfect when the measurements are exact. My specialty is artisanal bread. I developed my own recipe for sweet potato bread that became a hit in the neighborhood." The genuine surprise on David's face did not go unnoticed by Emily. She was used to that expression. Most people assumed her abilities were limited before even getting to know her. "That's impressive," David admitted. "I work as an accountant at Smith & Co., but I confess I never thought of math as something creative until now." "Everything in life has math," Emily smiled. "Even recipes for love need the right measurements. My grandmother always said that." David felt a tightness in his chest. When was the last time someone mentioned love in his presence without making him want to flee? Since Sarah's abandonment, the words seemed to carry only pain and disappointment. "And Lily," Emily asked gently, "how is she adapting at school?" The mention of his daughter made David straighten in his chair. His protective instincts were still on high alert, even though Emily showed no signs of discomfort or judgment. "She's doing well," he replied cautiously. "St. Teresa's school specializes. Lily has cerebral palsy. She's very intelligent, but she needs special care." Emily nodded in understanding, with no trace of pity in her eyes. "I'm sure she's amazing. Special children have their own light, don't you think?" "How do you know that?" The question slipped out before David could filter it. "Because I'm special, too," Emily replied simply. "I have Down syndrome, but that has never stopped me from dreaming, working, or wanting to build a family." The silence that followed was not uncomfortable, but filled with mutual understanding. David looked into Emily's eyes and saw something he hadn't expected to find. Strength. A quiet strength that came from someone who had faced challenges all her life and chose to keep smiling. "Are you afraid?" David asked, his own vulnerability emerging. "Every day," Emily admitted, "afraid of not being accepted, of hurting the people I love, of not being able to be independent, but I also have hope every day." David felt as if he were looking into a reverse mirror. She carried fears similar to his, but where he saw only darkness, she found light. "My co-workers." David hesitated, then decided to be honest. "They set up this meeting as a joke. They thought it would be funny to see me in an awkward situation." Emily's expression hardened slightly, but not with anger, with determination. "They're missing the chance to meet two incredible people," she said firmly. "The loss is theirs, not ours." The strength in her voice made David feel something he hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Pride in being there. Pride in being seen with her. Pride in being chosen to meet someone so extraordinary. "Would you like to meet Lily?" The question came out naturally, surprising David himself. He had never introduced girlfriends to his daughter. In fact, he hadn't had a girlfriend to introduce in years. Emily's face lit up. "I would love to, but only if she wants to, of course. Kids can be very picky about people." "She will like you," David said with a certainty that surprised him. "Lily has a special radar for genuine people." "And you?" Emily asked shyly. "Are you enjoying getting to know me?" David looked at the woman in front of him, curly hair shining in the golden light, eyes full of hope, small but determined hands holding the coffee cup. She had come prepared for a date with flowers, wearing her best dress, carrying simple yet profound dreams. And he, who had come prepared for humiliation, found something completely different. "Very much," he admitted. "More than I expected." Emily smiled, and it was as if the sun intensified its rays through the window. "My mom always says that the best surprises in life come disguised as simple things," she said. "A meeting, in a cafe, a bouquet of daisies, an honest conversation. Your mum seems very wise." "She is. She has worked as a cleaner at the General Hospital for 15 years. She has seen a lot of pain and a lot of joy. She taught me that the difference between the two lies in how we choose to see the world." David thought of his own mother, who had been in a nursing home for 2 years after a stroke. Mrs. Irene had always been a strong woman, but the illness had weakened her in a way that still hurt his heart. She always asked when he would bring a daughter-in-law to meet her. "Would you like to meet my mother too?" he asked impulsively. "Is she doing well?" Emily noticed something in his voice. "She's in a nursing home. She had a stroke, but she's recovering well. She always wanted to meet someone special in my life." Emily reached across the table, gently touching David's fingers. The gesture was simple but loaded with meaning. "I would love to meet her, and I'm sure she would be proud of the man you've become." For a moment, David allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, his life could be different from then on. 2 weeks had passed since their first meeting, and David found himself doing something he hadn't done in years, smiling on his way to work. The 875M bus cut through the streets of New York City on a Thursday morning, taking him to another night at the office of Smith & Cohn. But this time he carried in his shirt pocket a small note that Emily had left for him at the bakery. "I hope your day is as special as you are to me. With love, Emily." His co-workers had not failed to notice that David seemed different. Marcos Johnson, a younger accountant known for his bad jokes, was the first to tease him as soon as David arrived at the office on the 10th floor of the commercial building in the Midtown area. "So, Smith, how was the date with your princess?" Marcos said, making air quotes mockingly. "I bet you didn't even have the guts to show up." David stopped organizing the documents on the table and looked directly at Marcos, a newfound calmness in his eyes that surprised even him. "It was wonderful, thanks for asking," he replied calmly. "Emily is an amazing person." Marcos's smile faltered. He expected embarrassment, apologies, maybe even anger. He did not expect this serenity. "Seriously, you really went?" Marcos insisted, with other colleagues gathering to listen to the conversation. "Not only did I go, but I plan to see her again," David said, returning to work with a focus that made it clear the conversation was over. On the other side of the city, at Bakery Blossom in Brooklyn, Emily arrived for her 6 a.m. shift with a smile she couldn't hide. Her parents, Carmen and John, had noticed the change in their daughter in recent days. She hummed while getting ready, tended to the houseplants with even more care, and even her appetite had improved. "Good morning, James," she greeted the bakery owner, a 58-year-old man of Japanese descent who had become almost a father figure to Emily during her 3 years working there. "Good morning, Emily-chan," James replied, using the affectionate Japanese suffix he had adopted for her. "You are glowing today. Was the date good?" Emily blushed slightly as she tied the pink apron she wore for work. "It was very good, James-san. He is, exactly as you said, kind and caring. And when will you see each other again?" "This afternoon." Emily couldn't contain her excitement. "We're going for ice cream at Trianon Park with Lily. She will meet me." James smiled, but his expression also carried a paternal concern. "Remember, Emily-chan, take it slow. Meeting the daughter is an important step." "I know." Emily nodded seriously. "That's why I'm nervous. What if she doesn't like me?" "Impossible," said Mrs. Akemi, James's wife, who arrived carrying a tray of fresh pastries. "You have the purest heart I know. Children sense that." Emily spent the morning preparing her special sweet potato pastries, but her mind was divided between the recipe and her anxiety about meeting Lily. She had spent the previous night researching cerebral palsy on the public library's internet, wanting to understand better how she could be helpful and caring towards the girl. At 3 p.m., David arrived at St. Teresa School in the Upper East Side in his 2010 Honda Civic, his heart racing. Lily came out of school with her pink backpack on her back, walking with the help of her silver crutches. At 8 years old, she had her father's big, expressive eyes and a smile that lit up any room, despite the challenges she faced daily. "Daddy," she waved when she saw him. "How was work yesterday?" "It was good, Princess." David helped her into the car. "Today we're going to meet someone very special." "Emily?" Lily asked, adjusting her seatbelt carefully. "You talked about her yesterday. Is she your girlfriend?" David choked slightly. "Well, we're friends. Special friends." "Daddy, I'm not silly," Lily laughed. "You seem different, happier. Is it because of her?" His daughter's insight always surprised David. "Maybe," he admitted. "But I want you to tell me what you think of her, okay?" "Okay, but if she's nice to you, I will like her already." When they arrived at Trianon Park, Emily was already waiting for them, sitting on a bench near the playground, wearing a light green dress and white sneakers. She held a small bag and smiled nervously. Upon seeing David and Lily approaching, she stood up and waved shyly. "Lily," David said softly, "this is Emily." Emily knelt down to be at Lily's height, a natural gesture that touched David deeply. "Hi, Lily," Emily said in a sweet voice. "Your daddy talks a lot about you. He says you are the bravest girl he knows." Lily studied Emily for a moment with the seriousness that only children can show. "Did you bring something?" she asked, pointing to the bag in Emily's hand. Emily smiled. "I brought a sweet potato pastry that I made just for you. Your daddy said you like sweet things." "You made pastries?" Lily's eyes sparkled. "I want to learn to cook." "I can teach you if your daddy lets me." Emily looked at David, who... He nodded emotionally. "Really, you would teach me?" Lily asked excitedly. "Of course, cooking is like making magic with simple ingredients." Lily looked at her father, then at Emily, and her smile widened. "Dad, I like her." David felt his eyes welling up. In the months since the separation, Lily had met few new people, and she had never connected with someone so quickly. "How about we get that ice cream?" Emily suggested. They walked together to the ice cream shop, Lily in the middle, holding her father's hand with one hand, and to David's surprise, asking to hold Emily's hand with the other. "Emily," Lily said as they licked their ice creams, "can you be my second mommy?" The silence that followed was filled with emotion. Emily looked at David, who was clearly moved, and then turned her affectionate gaze back to Lily. "How about we start by being special friends?" Emily suggested. "And let's see what the future holds for us." Lily agreed happily, and David knew in that moment that his life had changed forever. The month of April brought with it the first chilly mornings of autumn in New York City, and with them a routine that David never imagined he would have. Every Saturday morning he and Lily walked to Bakery Blossom in Brooklyn to pick up Emily, who had become an inseparable part of their weekends. What had started as casual meetups had evolved into a family tradition that warmed David's heart more than any morning coffee. On this particular Saturday, Lily was especially excited. She had spent the week practicing the cookie recipe that Emily had taught her, determined to surprise her special friend, as she had come to call her after that first meeting in the park. "Dad, do you think the cookies turned out good?" Lily asked for the 5th time as they walked down Galvan Boulevard, her steps careful but determined with the crutches. "I'm sure they turned out perfect, Princess," David smiled, carrying a small container with the cookies that Lily had prepared with the help of their neighbor, Mrs. Rose, a 70-year-old lady who lived next door and had become a sort of surrogate grandmother for Lily. Bakery Blossom was as busy as ever on Saturdays, with elderly Japanese people doing their morning shopping and young couples trying the artisanal breads that had made Emily famous in the neighborhood. Behind the counter, Emily was arranging the still-warm pastries with the meticulous care that David had learned to admire in everything she did. "Emily!" Lily shouted excitedly as soon as she saw her, causing several customers to turn and smile at the sight of the girl waving energetically. Emily dropped everything she was doing and rushed to greet them, her eyes shining with the genuine joy she always showed when seeing them. "Lily-chan," she said, adopting the affectionate Japanese term she had learned from James. "How are you, my dear?" "I made cookies for you," Lily announced proudly, pointing to the container her father was carrying. "I used your recipe, and they turned out delicious." Emily took the container from David's hands, her fingers brushing briefly against his, a simple touch that still made his heart race after weeks of being together. "Can I try one now?" Emily asked, opening the container and being greeted by the sweet aroma of cinnamon and vanilla. Lily nodded excitedly as Emily picked up one of the cookies and tasted it with the seriousness of a professional food critic. "Lily," Emily said after a moment, "these are the best cookies I've ever tasted in my life. You truly have a talent for cooking." Lily's face lit up with a pride that David rarely saw in his daughter. Since the accident during childbirth that had caused her cerebral palsy, Lily often felt different and less capable than other children. To see someone genuinely recognize a special talent of hers was an invaluable gift. "Emily," James approached the group, "you can finish your shift early today. Mrs. Akemi and I can handle the rush." "Are you sure, James?" Emily asked, although her eyes sparkled at the prospect of spending more time with David and Lily. "Absolutely. You all enjoy this beautiful day." David felt a wave of gratitude for the Japanese couple who had become an extended family for Emily. The way James and Mrs. Akemi treated her, with respect, affection, and recognition of her abilities, was a comforting contrast to the discriminatory attitudes that David knew Emily often faced. "Where are we going today?" Emily asked, taking off her apron and grabbing her small brown leather bag. "Lily chooses," David said, as had become tradition. "Immigration Museum," Lily announced without hesitation. "I want to show Emily the stories of the Japanese who came to America." Emily smiled, touched by the girl's consideration. "Perfect. I'll love learning more about the culture of the neighborhood where I work." During the subway ride to the Immigration Museum, David observed the natural interaction between Emily and Lily. They talked about school, cooking, and dreams with an ease that moved him deeply. Lily, who usually was shy around strangers, spoke non-stop, sharing about her physical therapy classes, her classmates, and even her worries about being different. "You know, Lily," Emily said as the train cut through the city, "when I was your age, I also worried about being different, but my mother taught me something very important." "What?" Lily asked, leaning in closer. "That the most special people in the world are those who face challenges and still keep smiling. You are one of those people." Lily was thoughtful for a moment. "Do you think I'm special?" "I think you're extraordinary," Emily replied with conviction. "And your dad thinks so too." David felt his eyes welling up. Hearing someone recognize the strength and beauty of his daughter in the way Emily did was a balm for wounds he didn't even know he still carried. At the museum, Emily showed genuine interest in every exhibit, asking insightful questions and establishing. Lily was proud to explain the connections between the history of Japanese immigration and her own experience working in the community. David found himself falling in love not only with the incredible woman that Emily was, but also with the way she made his daughter feel valued and capable. "Dad," Lily whispered as Emily attentively read a panel about culinary traditions, "I think you should marry her." David nearly choked. "Lily!" "She makes us happy," Lily continued with the brutal honesty of children. "And she really likes us. I can feel it." David looked at Emily, who had stepped back a little to give privacy to the conversation between father and daughter, but was watching them with a tender smile on her face. "Would you like that?" David asked gently. "Very much," Lily replied without hesitation. "She would be the best stepmom in the world." At that moment, David knew that his feelings for Emily had grown beyond what he had imagined possible. It wasn't just attraction or companionship. It was love, a love that included not only him, but also his daughter and the family dreams he had buried long ago. "Let's take it slow, Princess," David said, kissing his daughter's forehead. "But who knows?" Lily smiled, satisfied with the answer, and David allowed himself to dream of a future that, for the first time in years, seemed full of possibilities. May arrived, with the June festivities already starting to color the streets of New York City, and with them came a discovery that would completely change David's perception of Emily. It was a cloudy Friday when he decided to surprise Emily by picking her up early at the bakery, bringing flowers, a gesture that had become his way of showing affection without pushing for more physical intimacy than she was comfortable with. Upon arriving at Bakery Blossom, David found an unusual scene. Emily was sitting at the back table, surrounded by piles of papers, a calculator in hand, and an old laptop open in front of her. She was wearing glasses that David had never seen before, and her expression was one of deep concentration as she made notes on a detailed spreadsheet. "Emily," he called softly, not wanting to startle her. She looked up, quickly removing her glasses in a gesture that suggested embarrassment. "David, you came early." "What are you doing?" he asked, approaching and noticing that the papers were bank statements, deposit slips, and what appeared to be complex financial reports. Emily hesitated, biting her lower lip in a nervous gesture that David had learned to recognize. "James asked for my help with the bakery's accounting," she finally said. "He found out that I have a knack for numbers." David looked more closely at the papers spread across the table. They weren't just simple numbers. They were cash flow analyses, profit projections, monthly comparisons organized with a precision that would make any professional accountant proud. "Emily, this is senior accountant." "Work," David said, genuinely impressed. "How did you learn to do this?" Emily blushed deeply. "I've been taking online courses for 3 years, financial math, management, even a bit of economics. I've always had a knack for numbers, and I wanted to learn more." Online courses. David sat down in the chair next to her, his admiration growing. "What kind of courses?" "FGV, Fundação Bradesco, some from NYU too," Emily murmured, as if confessing a crime. "I know it might seem strange, someone like me taking these courses, but—" "Someone like you?" David interrupted, his voice laden with disbelief. "Emily, you're taking university courses in management and economics. That's amazing." Emily looked up, surprised by his positive reaction. "Don't you think it's presumptuous of me?" "Presumptuous." David picked up one of the spreadsheets she had created, analyzing the meticulous organization of the data. "Emily, this work is better structured than many reports I see at the office. You have a natural talent for this." "My parents don't know," Emily admitted. "They would worry, think I'm deluding myself with impossible dreams." David felt a tightness in his chest. How many times had Emily been discouraged from dreaming big? How many opportunities had been denied to her simply because people couldn't see beyond her Down syndrome? "Emily," he said calmly, "can I see the rest of your work?" For the next hour, Emily showed David 3 years of self-directed studies, certificates of completion for online courses, meticulous notes, practical projects she had developed for the bakery, including an inventory control system that had reduced waste by 30% and a loyalty program that had increased sales by 15%. "Does James know about all this?" David asked, flipping through a notebook filled with market analyses Emily had done on the Brooklyn neighborhood. "He found out by accident last month when he saw me calculating mentally faster than the calculator," Emily explained. "Since then, he's been letting me help with the financial side." David was silent for a moment, processing the magnitude of what he had discovered. The woman he was falling for was not just sweet and caring, she was brilliant. More than that, she had overcome unimaginable obstacles to develop skills that many qualified professionals did not possess. "Emily, have you ever thought about working in finance?" he asked. "Who would give me an opportunity?" Emily laughed bitterly. "People see my syndrome before they see my abilities." "I would," David said impulsively. "My company is always in need of competent assistants. You would be better than half the interns that come through there." Emily looked at him with a mix of hope and skepticism. "Would you be serious?" "Completely serious. In fact—" David paused, an idea forming in his mind. "Would you like to take a look at my own finances? Ever since Sarah left, I've kind of let everything get messy. You would trust that to me?" The vulnerability in Emily's voice deeply touched David. He realized that this was not just a professional matter. It was a question of self-worth, of being seen as capable and trustworthy. "Emily, after seeing this work, I would trust you with my financial life," he said with absolute sincerity. Tears shimmered in Emily's eyes. No one has ever said that to me before. Then it's about time someone did. David leaned in closer, gently taking her hand. You are extraordinary, Emily, in every way. At that moment, James appeared from the back of the bakery, smiling at the scene. She showed the work, didn't she? He said in Japanese, then repeated it in English. Emily-chan is a genius with numbers. I'm thinking of promoting her to financial manager. Emily looked from David to James, then back to David, as if she couldn't believe what was happening. Really? She asked softly. Really? David and James replied simultaneously, making everyone laugh. David realized he had discovered a new facet of Emily, one that made him admire her even more. She was not just the sweet and caring woman who had captured his heart and Isabella's. She was a force of determination and intelligence who had overcome every obstacle placed in her path. And, in that moment, he knew he was not just falling in love. He was falling in love with a woman who could be his partner in every sense of the word. Corpus Christi Sunday brought a particularly clear morning to New York City, and David decided it was time to take the next important step in his relationship with Emily. For weeks, he had been thinking about taking her to meet his mother, Mrs. Irene, at St. Vincent's nursing home in Queens. The idea made him nervous. His mother had always been a woman of strong opinions, and David feared she would not understand how special Emily was. Isabella had insisted on coming along, claiming that Grandma needs to meet our Emily. The way his daughter referred to Emily as ours always warmed David's heart and made him reflect on how serious his feelings had become. Dad, you're more nervous than I am, Emily observed from the passenger seat as David drove through the streets of Queens. She wore a light pink dress with small embroidered flowers, a careful choice to make a good impression on her potential mother-in-law. It's just that my mom... David hesitated, searching for the right words. She has always been very protective of me, especially after the divorce. She didn't like Sarah, Emily asked gently. Actually, she loved Sarah. That's why she was so hurt when she left us, David explained, stopping at a red light. My mum saw me suffer a lot, and I think she's afraid I will get hurt again. Isabella leaned in from the back seat. Grandma's going to love Emily, Dad. She always says you need someone to take care of your heart. Emily smiled, touching David's hand resting on the gear shift. Whatever she thinks of me, I will respect. She is your mother, and it's clear she loves you very much. St. Vincent's nursing home was a one-story building, painted light yellow, surrounded by a well-kept garden, where some elderly residents were enjoying the morning sun in their wheelchairs. David always felt a tightness in his chest upon arriving there, remembering the strong and independent woman his mother had been before the stroke. Mrs. Irene is in the activities room, informed Nurse Carla, a middle-aged black woman who always treated David's mother with special care. She is very excited today. She said her son was bringing a surprise. David, Emily, and Isabella walked down the hallway, decorated with colorful drawings made by the residents themselves. The smell of lavender and hospital disinfectant mixed comfortingly. A scent David had learned to associate with care and hope. Mrs. Irene was sitting in her wheelchair near the window, watching the activity in the garden. At 68, she still kept her grey hair neatly styled and maintained an upright posture that betrayed the determined woman she had always been. The stroke had partially affected her speech and movements on her right side, but her brown eyes, just like David's, remained alert and intelligent. "My son," said Mrs. Irene, her pronunciation slightly slurred but filled with joy, "and my beautiful granddaughter." Isabella rushed to hug her grandma, careful not to unbalance her. "Grandma, we brought someone very special to meet you." Mrs. Irene looked at Emily with curiosity, then turned her gaze back to David with an expression he knew well, the expression of a mother assessing an important situation. "Mom," David said, stepping closer with Emily by his side. "This is Emily. Emily, this is my mother, Irene." Emily approached the wheelchair and, to David's surprise, knelt beside Mrs. Irene, bringing herself to her level. "Mrs. Irene," Emily said in a soft and respectful voice, "it's an honor to meet you. David talks about you all the time, always with great affection." Mrs. Irene studied Emily for a long moment, her eyes scanning the open and sincere face of the young woman. Then, slowly, she raised her left hand, the one that still functioned normally, and gently touched Emily's face. You have kind eyes," Mrs. Irene said with difficulty, but her voice carried approval. "My David needs someone with kind eyes." Emily smiled, covering Mrs. Irene's hand with her own. "He has a wonderful heart, Mrs. Irene, and he raised an amazing daughter." "Isabella, does she like you?" asked Mrs. Irene, looking at her granddaughter, who was watching the scene with a huge smile. "Grandma is going to love to know," Isabella interrupted excitedly. "Emily is teaching me how to cook. Yesterday we made a carrot cake that turned out delicious." Mrs. Irene's eyes lit up. It had been an excellent cook, and missed being able to teach her recipes to her granddaughter due to physical limitations. "Do you cook?" Mrs. Irene asked. "I work in a bakery," Emily explained. "I make artisanal breads, and I've been teaching some recipes to Lily. She has a lot of natural talent." "My recipes," Mrs. Irene said slowly, "are in the blue notebook at home of David." David felt a deep emotion. The blue notebook was a family treasure, filled with traditional recipes that his mother had collected over decades, including dishes that his Italian grandmother had brought from Europe. "Can you teach her?" Mrs. Irene asked Emily. "It would be an honor," Emily replied sincerely. "And maybe you could tell me the stories behind the recipes. Lily would love to know the family history." Mrs. Irene smiled, the first truly broad smile that David had seen on his mother's face since the stroke. "David!" Mrs. Irene called, gesturing for her son to come closer. When he knelt beside the chair, she whispered in his ear, "This is special. Don't let it slip away." David felt his eyes welling up. His mother's approval meant the world to him, especially coming from a woman who had become increasingly cautious with new people after the stroke. "Emily," Mrs. Irene said, "do you want to be part of our family?" The direct question made Emily blush deeply. She looked at David, who nodded encouragingly, then at Lily, who was silently clapping in excitement. "More than anything in the world," Emily answered honestly. "Then, welcome," said Mrs. Irene, extending her arms to hug Emily. When they said goodbye 2 hours later, after Emily had carefully written down several recipes that Mrs. Irene could remember, and Lily had shown her latest drawings, David felt as if a huge weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "She's amazing," Emily said in the car, still emotional. "You can see where you got your strength and kindness." "And she loved you," David smiled, taking Emily's hand. "I've never seen my mother connect with someone so quickly after the stroke." "Dad," Lily spoke from the back seat, "now does Emily really belong to the family?" David looked in the rearview mirror at his daughter, then at Emily, who was holding his hand affectionately. "I think so, Princess," he said softly. "I think so." The month of August brought with it cold winds and a discovery that would deeply shake the foundations of David and Emily's relationship. It was a rainy Thursday when David arrived at the office of Smith & Co. earlier than usual, hoping to finish some reports before his colleagues arrived. What he didn't expect was to find his boss, Dr. Henry Smith, sitting alone in his office with the door open, staring intently at a photo on his desk. Dr. Smith was a 52-year-old man, always impeccably dressed, known for his rigid posture and biting comments about quality standards that often sounded like disguised prejudice. He was the one who had made the cruelest comments about David's relationship with Emily, even suggesting that David reconsider his personal choices if he wanted to advance in the company. "Good morning, Dr. Smith," David greeted, trying to go unnoticed. "Smith," the boss's voice came out rougher than usual. "Come in here for a moment." David hesitated. Private conversations with Dr. Smith rarely ended well, especially after some colleagues had told him about his relationship with Emily. But the man's demeanor seemed different, less aggressive, more vulnerable. "Have a seat," Dr. Smith indicated the chair in front of his executive desk. David noticed that the photo his boss was looking at was turned so that he couldn't see its content. "Dr. Smith, if this is about Emily," David began defensively. "It is about her, yes." Dr. Smith interrupted him, his voice strangely controlled. "But perhaps not in the way you imagine." David tensed, preparing for another series of discriminatory comments. Dr. Smith remained silent for a long moment, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted his tie. "Smith, how old is your girlfriend?" 24 years old. "Why?" Dr. Smith closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering courage for something very difficult. Then slowly he turned the photo on his desk so that David could see it. The image showed Dr. Smith much younger, next to an elegant woman and a small child with Down syndrome, a boy of perhaps 3 years, beaming at the camera. David was shocked. "Dr. Smith, I didn't know that." "No one knows." The boss's voice came out as a harsh whisper. "Miguel is 24 now, the same age as your Emily." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken revelations. David looked at the man who had spent months humiliating him for his relationship and saw something he never expected to see: deep shame and regret. "Where is he?" David asked softly. "In an institution in Springfield," Dr. Smith replied, his voice barely audible. "One of the best in the country. He has everything he needs: medical care, activities, therapies. But he doesn't have family." Dr. Smith flinched as if he had been slapped. "My ex-wife, when Miguel was born. She said that our careers, our social standing, we couldn't maintain our reputation with a child like that. And you agreed." "I was young, ambitious, cowardly," Dr. Smith admitted, tears shining in his eyes. "I thought I was protecting my family, my career. I thought it was the most practical decision." David felt a mix of anger and pity. "Dr. Smith, 21 years, Smith. 21 years since I last saw my son in person. I pay for everything, receive medical reports, but—" His voice broke. "I am a monster. Why are you telling me this?" Dr. Smith stood up and walked to the window, watching the rain falling over New York City. "Because in the last few months, seeing you with Emily, seeing how you treat her with dignity, how your daughter loves her, how you are a real family." He paused, struggling against his emotions. "I realized what I threw away out of cowardice." David remained silent, processing the magnitude of the confession. "All the cruel comments I made about you," Dr. Smith continued, "were because seeing your happiness reminded me of my own cowardice. I envied your courage, Santos." "Does Miguel know about his father?" "He knows he has a dad who pays his bills," Dr. Smith replied bitterly. "But I never told him why I never visit, why our family rejected him." David thought of Emily, her daily strength to overcome prejudice, of Lily and how the two had become inseparable, of Mrs. Irene and how she had embraced Emily immediately. He thought of all the people who chose to see beyond differences and find true love. "Dr. Smith," David said calmly, "it's not too late." "Too late for what?" "To be the father that Miguel always deserved." Dr. Smith turned from the window, his face showing a mix of hope and terror. "Do you really think so? After all this time?" Emily taught me that it's never too late to choose love over fear, David replied. But you need to be ready to ask for forgiveness and prove that you've changed. I don't even know where to start, David thought for a moment. How about starting by apologizing to your family here in the office, to me, to Emily, to everyone you hurt with your prejudices? Dr. Smith nodded slowly. You're right. It's the least I can do. And then, David continued, maybe it's time to pay a visit to Springfield. He probably hates me. Or maybe he's just waiting for his father to have the courage to show up. Dr. Smith returned to his desk and picked up the photo again, looking at the smiling boy he had abandoned out of cowardice. Santos, he finally said, I would like to ask for your forgiveness, and if possible, I would like to meet Emily properly, as a person, not as a target of my prejudices. David felt a complex mix of emotions. The man who had made his days in the office unbearable was there, vulnerable and regretful, asking for a chance at redemption. Dr. Smith, David said, everyone deserves a second chance, but you will have to prove that you've really changed. I will prove it, whatever it takes. At that moment, David understood that sometimes the cruelest people are those who suffer in silence with their own flaws, and perhaps, just perhaps, the strength and love that Emily had brought into his life could help heal wounds much deeper than he had imagined. The colorful fantasies of the street carnival painted New York City with joy in February, and with them came a revelation that would forever change Marina's family's perception of David. It was a Saturday morning when Karen and John Johnson decided to make a surprise visit to their daughter at the bakery, carrying warm containers of homemade chili, a family tradition they had kept for years. Karen, a 48-year-old woman with graying hair tied in a practical bun and calloused hands from 15 years cleaning the General Hospital, had become increasingly concerned about her daughter's relationship. Not because she disliked David. He had always been respectful and kind, but because she feared that Emily was deluding herself with impossible dreams of a traditional family. John, do you think we are being overprotective? Karen asked her husband as they walked down Maple Street, observing the carnival decorations that still adorned the neighborhood. John Johnson, a 52-year-old man working as a night janitor in a commercial building downtown, adjusted the reading glasses he always carried in his shirt pocket. Karen, our daughter is happy, happier than I've seen her in a long time. But what if she gets hurt? What if he decides he wants a normal woman? Emily is normal, dear, John replied firmly, and if this David can't see that, then he doesn't deserve our daughter. Upon arriving at Bakery Blossom, they found a scene that completely surprised them. Emily was behind the counter, but not just serving customers. She was training a new young employee named Emily, guiding her on stock, organization and pricing calculations with a professional authority that Karen had never seen in her daughter. Emily-chan, Emily patiently explained, when you calculate the selling price, you need to consider not only the cost of ingredients, but also labor, fixed expenses and profit margin. Look here on the spreadsheet. Karen and John exchanged surprised glances. Since when did Emily talk about spreadsheets and profit margins? Mom! Dad! Emily exclaimed upon seeing them, her face lighting up. What a nice surprise! We brought chili, Karen said, still processing the scene she had witnessed. You were teaching the girl? James-san promoted me, Emily proudly announced. I'm now the financial supervisor of the bakery. I'm helping to train the new employees and handling all the numbers. John approached the counter, observing the meticulously organized papers that Emily had left on the countertop. They were complex reports, sales graphs, and analyses that looked like something from a corporate office. Emily, sweetheart, since when do you know how to do these things? John asked, genuinely curious. Emily blushed slightly. I Well, I've been studying for a few years. Online courses, books. And David has been helping me a lot. He's an accountant, you know. Karen felt a tightness in her chest, not from worry, but from something that took a moment to identify, pride mixed with guilt. Her daughter had developed complex professional skills, and she, the mother, knew nothing about it. "David is helping you with this?" Karen asked. "More than helping," Emily smiled. "He says I have a natural talent for management. He even suggested I take the entrance exam to study financial management." Entrance exam. John almost dropped. Emily adjusted her glasses. "Emily, do you want to go to college?" Before Emily could answer, the door of the bakery opened, and David entered with Lily, both dressed in simple Halloween costumes, he as a pirate and she as a princess. Lily immediately ran to hug Emily, while David politely greeted her parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Karen," David said respectfully, "it's great to see you. How are you?" "We're well," Mrs. Karen replied, studying David with new eyes. "Emily was telling us about the studies you do together." David sensed the tension in her voice and chose his words carefully. "Emily has an exceptional talent for numbers, Mrs. Karen. She is helping me much more than I am helping her." "Daddy, tell them about the special project," Lily interrupted excitedly, still hugging Emily. "What project?" John asked. David hesitated, then decided to be honest. "Well, Emily has completely organized my personal finances over the past few months. She discovered that I was paying unnecessary interest on several bills, reorganized my budget, and even helped me create a savings plan for Lily's future." Mrs. Karen blinked, surprised. "Emily did that?" "More than that," David continued. "She identified that I was being underpaid at my old job. Thanks to the spreadsheets she created showing my productivity versus my salary, I was able to negotiate a promotion and a 40% raise." 40%? John repeated incredulously. "And now," Emily added shyly, "some other companies are interested in my financial organization work. David is helping me set up a small consulting business." Mrs. Karen sat heavily in one of the bakery chairs. The daughter she had spent her life protecting was not only supporting herself, but thriving professionally in ways she had never imagined. "Emily," Mrs. Karen said with a choked voice, "why didn't you ever tell us about these dreams?" Emily approached her mother, kneeling beside the chair. "Because I was afraid you would think I was dreaming too big." "Dreaming too big?" John stepped closer, placing his hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Emily, you are the smartest person we know. We were the foolish ones for not realizing that sooner." Mrs. Karen started to cry, not out of sadness, but out of pride mixed with regret. "Honey, I'm sorry. We underestimated you." "You didn't underestimate me," Emily said softly. "You protected me when I needed to be protected. But now I can fly." David watched the scene, moved. He saw the exact moment when Emily's parents began to see her not as their special daughter who needed care, but as the competent and independent woman she had become. "David," Mrs. Karen turned to him, "thank you." "Why, Mrs. Karen?" "For helping our daughter discover what she always was, but that we were afraid to let her show." John nodded. "And for seeing her as a partner, not as someone who needs to be taken care of." "Actually," David said honestly, "I think I'm the one who needs to be taken care of. Emily has brought organization, purpose, and joy into our lives in a way I didn't even know was possible." Lily tugged at her father's costume sleeve. "Daddy, can I tell?" David smiled. "You can tell, Princess." "Emily is helping Daddy save money so we can have our own house," Lily announced triumphantly. "A big house where Grandma Irene can come live with us when she leaves the hospital." The silence that followed was heavy with understanding. Mrs. Karen and John realized that David did not see Emily as a temporary fling, but as part of a solid and well-planned future. Our own house, Mrs. Karen repeated. If Emily wants, David said, looking affectionately at her. I would love to build a life together, a life where she can be everything she dreams of being. Emily stood up and walked over to David, taking his hand. I want that more than anything in the world. Mrs. Karen and John exchanged glances, both smiling at the same time. So, John said, how about you come over for dinner on Sunday? I have some recipes from my mother that Emily might want to include in the honeymoon menu. October brought with it the springtime in New York City and an opportunity that would completely change the course of Emily and David's professional lives. The scent of jasmine lingered in the air when David came home from work on a Friday and found Emily sitting at the dining table, surrounded by documents and with a mixed expression of excitement and nervousness on her face. "David!" She stood up as soon as she saw him enter. "You won't believe what happened today." Lily, who was on the couch doing homework, looked up with interest. "Emily got a really important call, Daddy." David placed his briefcase on the floor and approached, noticing that among the papers was a formal proposal printed on letterhead from a company. He immediately recognized Sustainable Group NYC, one of the largest business consulting firms in the city. "Emily, what is this?" he asked, picking up the document. "Remember Dr. Patricia, the accountant we met at the seminar on workplace inclusion last month?" Emily said quickly, her words tumbling out in excitement. "She recommended my work to her company." David read the document with growing admiration. It was a formal proposal for Emily to develop a consulting program in financial organization, specifically aimed at small businesses in the food sector. The contract amount made him blink several times to make sure he had read it correctly. "Emily," he said slowly, "this contract is for 6 months, with the possibility of renewal, and the amount—" He paused, looking at her. "Do you realize this is more than I earn as a senior accountant?" Emily blushed deeply. "It's a lot of money, isn't it? Maybe I should decline." "Decline?" David dropped the paper and took her hands. "Emily, are you crazy? This is the professional recognition you've always deserved." "But what if I can't do it? And will I disappoint them?" Lily stood up from the sofa and joined the conversation. "Emily, you are the smartest person I know. You organized all of Dad's finances, saved James's bakery, and even taught me how to do mental math." David smiled at his daughter's wisdom. Lily is right. And besides, he picked up another document from the table. "What is this?" Emily took the paper with reverence. It was an acceptance letter from a university in New York for the evening program in financial management. "I passed the entrance exam," she said softly, as if she still couldn't believe it. "After all the online courses I took, I decided to give it a try. And I got 3rd place. David felt his eyes welling up. "Emily, you got 3rd place in a competitive entrance exam, received a job offer that most graduates would dream of, and you're still doubting yourself?" "It's just that everything is happening so fast," Emily admitted. "Sometimes I wake up thinking it's a dream." "It's not a dream," Lily said with conviction. "It's because you are amazing and people are finally noticing." At that moment, the phone rang. David answered and recognized the voice of Dr. Smith, who had become a completely different person in the past few months since their conversation about his son, Michael. "Smith, I hope I'm not interrupting, but I need to speak with you and Emily. It's about a proposal." "What kind of proposal, Dr. Smith?" "I'm opening a consulting division in the company, focused on corporate inclusion. After getting to know Emily's work better and seeing how she has transformed not only her life but the lives of many around her, I would like to offer a partnership." David was silent for a moment. "A partnership?" "Emily would be a founding partner of the new division. She would lead a team of consultants specializing in financial organization for companies that want to implement genuine inclusion programs. And you, Smith, would be the administrative director. David looked at Emily, who had overheard the conversation and was wide-eyed. "Dr. Smith," David said calmly, "does this mean that—" "It means you two would own 30% of the new division, with complete autonomy to develop the projects as you see fit." Emily sat heavily in her chair. In a single day, she had received 3 opportunities that completely changed her perspective on the future. "Can I talk to Emily and give you an answer on Monday?" David asked. "Of course, but Smith, don't take too long. This kind of opportunity is rare." After David hung up the phone, the 3 sat in silence for a few moments, processing the magnitude of the changes happening. "Dad," Lily finally said, "does this mean you two are going to get rich?" David laughed. "It means Emily will be able to fulfill all her dreams and still help others fulfill theirs too." "And you, David?" Emily asked softly. "What do you want?" David knelt in front of her chair, taking her hands. "I want to build this incredible life by your side. I want to be your family, your business partner, your biggest supporter. Even if I make more money than you?" Emily asked with a shy smile. "Especially because of that," David replied without hesitation. "Your prosperity is my prosperity. Your success is our success." Lily jumped between the two. "And can I be the first intern at the company when I grow up?" Emily hugged the girl affectionately. "You can be whatever you want to be, Lily. The whole world is open to brave people like you." David looked at the 2 women who had completely transformed his life. A year earlier, he was a lonely and bitter man, convinced he didn't deserve happiness. Now he was about to marry an extraordinary woman who had become a successful entrepreneur, raise a daughter who flourished under the love of a united family, and build a business that could help others like Emily find their place in the world. "So," Emily said, looking at the documents spread out on the table, "which opportunity do we take care of first?" "All of them," David replied. "Because now we are a real family and families face challenges together." Lily smiled. "And families also celebrate together. How about pizza for dinner?" Emily and David laughed, and in that simple moment, planning a pizza to celebrate a day that would change their lives forever, they knew they had found something far more valuable than professional success. They had found a home. December arrived with the typical warmth of New York summer and a year-end party at St. Teresa School that would become a milestone in the lives of David, Emily, and Lily. The schoolyard was decorated with colorful Christmas lights and student projects on inclusion and diversity, a special project that Lily had enthusiastically led. David adjusted his tie for the 3rd time while waiting for Emily to finish getting ready in the school bathroom. She had insisted on changing there, saying she wanted to make a special entrance for Lily's presentation. 2 months earlier, when Principal Angela had announced that each student could present a project on special families, Lily immediately knew what her theme would be. "Dad, are you nervous?" Lily asked, radiant in her light blue dress chosen especially for the occasion. She had set aside her crutches for the presentation, preferring to use her wheelchair decorated with colorful ribbons. "A little," David admitted. "Presentations always make me nervous. But you're not the one presenting," Lily laughed. "It's about our family, and families are easy to talk about when you love them." Emily came out of the bathroom, and David felt his heart race. She wore an emerald green dress that highlighted her brown eyes, and her curly hair was loose, framing her face that shone with happiness. But what caught his attention the most was the small binder she carried, filled with documents organized with the meticulous care that had become her trademark. "Ready," Emily announced, kissing David softly on her face. "Lily, are you sure you want to do this. I'm absolutely sure, Lily replied with conviction. The world needs to know our story. The gym was packed with parents, teachers, and students as the trio made their way to the presentation area. David recognized several families, some traditional, others blended, all united by the love for the special children studying at St. Teresa. Among the audience, David spotted two figures that made him smile. Dr. Smith was sitting in the front row next to a 24-year-old young man with Down syndrome who could only be Michael. The reunion between father and son had happened 2 months earlier, and although it was still a delicate process, the two were rebuilding their relationship step by step. Michael now spent weekends at his father's house and had become friends with Lily, who helped him with his own professional aspirations. Good evening, St. Teresa families. Principal Angela's voice echoed through the microphone. Tonight, we celebrate the diversity and strength of the families that make our school community so special. Our first presentation is by Lily Smith, who will tell us about the family we chose to build. Lily wheeled herself to the center of the gym, where a microphone had been. Adjusted to her height, David and Emily positioned themselves beside her as they had rehearsed. My name is Lily. I'm 8 years old, and I want to tell you about the most amazing family in the world, Lily began, her clear and confident voice echoing through the silent gym. 1.5 years ago, it was just me and my dad. He thought he didn't deserve to be happy because my first mommy left when she found out I was special. A murmur of emotion swept through the audience. David felt his eyes welling up, but remained strong beside his daughter. Then one day, Lily continued, my dad met Emily at a cafe. She had flowers and a heart as big as the world. And you know what happened? She didn't see a broken girl when she looked at me. She saw a girl who could learn, dream, and be happy. Emily stepped forward, taking the microphone with slightly trembling hands. When I met David and Lily, Emily said, her voice emotional yet clear, I was used to people who thought I should settle for less. But they showed me that I could dream big, not just dream, but achieve. Emily opened her folder and took out some documents. Today, I am a college student, a businesswoman, and a partner in a consultancy that helps other special people find their place in the professional world. But do you know what my most important achievement is? She looked at David and Lily. Being part of a family that loves me just as I am, and that celebrates every victory of mine as if it were their own. David took the microphone, his voice choked with emotion. 1.5 years ago, I was broken. I thought I had failed. As a father and as a man. Emily not only healed me, she taught me that true love doesn't happen despite differences, but because of how those differences complete us. Lily spoke again. Our family proves that it doesn't matter how you were born or what challenges you face. What matters is how much love you have to give and receive. The audience was in absolute silence, many with tears in their eyes. And now, Lily smiled mischievously, I have a special announcement to make. David and Emily exchanged confused glances. This wasn't in the rehearsed script. Lily pulled out a small envelope from her dress pocket. Dad, Emily, can you open this? With trembling hands, David opened the envelope and found a modified birth certificate inside. Obviously an artistic work by Lily, but done with so much love that it touched his heart deeply. On the line, Mother's name, was written Emily Johnson Smith in fancy letters. Lily, Emily whispered, emotional. Emily, do you want to be officially my second mommy? Lily asked into the microphone, making sure the entire gym heard. Emily knelt beside the wheelchair and hugged Lily, tears streaming freely down her face. Yes, my love. More than anything in the world, The audience erupted in applause, but David could barely hear due to the emotion overwhelming him. There, in that gym decorated with Christmas lights, with his daughter in the arms of the woman he loved, and hundreds of people applauding their family, he understood that he had found something he thought was lost forever. A true home. Dr. Smith stood up from the audience and began to applaud, followed by Michael and quickly by everyone present. The ovation lasted several minutes, and when it finally ceased, Lily took the microphone one last time. "Special families aren't those that don't have problems," said the girl, with the wisdom that only children who have faced challenges possess. "They are those that choose to face problems together, with love and courage." David looked around the gym, at Dr. Smith holding Michael's hand, at the parents he had met throughout the year who had become a support network, at the teachers who dedicated their lives to showing that every child has value, at his daughter who had become the bravest person he knew. But most importantly, he looked at Emily, the woman who had come into his life as a surprise and had become his anchor, his partner, and the living proof that true love not only overcomes prejudice, but transforms entire communities. 6 months later, David and Emily would marry in the garden of St. Vincent's nursing home, with Mrs. Irene as the maid of honor and Lily as the flower girl. The small consultancy they founded together would become a reference in corporate inclusion in the state of New York. Michael would find his first job through the program they developed, and Lily, at 12 years old, would win the National Writing Award with an essay about blended families. But all of that was yet to come. On that December night, under the Christmas lights of the St. Teresa School courtyard, they were simply a family, imperfect, real, and absolutely extraordinary.